Well, we all know about rising living costs, don't we? So today, some advice came from the government. Safeguarding Minister Rachel Maclean says if you're struggling, then why don't you start working longer hours or maybe move and get a better job? Now, I've got to say, people have been furious with her and are saying that, you know, she's out of touch. In fact, actually, out of touch is trending on a lot of the social media. People are saying that the Tories don't really get it. But I'll show you the clip and then we'll just have a conversation after it, because I actually think it's quite unfair, actually, the way that a lot of this has been reported in much of the media today. Let's have a listen.
The remarks that I made about people taking on more hours are part of our plan to help people get back into work. We've got a very good record of helping people get back into work after the COVID crisis, and also to enable them to, if they want to, and it's right for them, to increase their skills, which is why we have our job coaches in the job centres. They will be the best place to work with that individual, to assess their situation and help them if it's right for them.
See, there you go. There was a bit more context in that clip there, because what's happened on a lot of the media is you've got, like, I don't know, so like a 10-second clip of this interview this morning, which I think was done initially on Sky News, where she made the initial comment about longer term, you know, this, that, the other, work longer hours, get a better job. It's immediately been jumped on by lots of the media. As I was just saying earlier, Tories are out of touch, you know, and quite offended, actually, a lot of people. I'm going to start with you on this, Nick.
Yep.
Because I think that right now, a lot of the Tories can't do right for doing wrong. I'm actually somebody who thinks that the Tories, for whatever reason, they don't seem to be doing enough to help those people that are really struggling. So, you know, like, I don't know if it's people that physically can't go to work or whatever. I don't think they are doing enough to help those people. But notwithstanding that, I do think that there are a segment of society that's struggling at the moment, and Lee Anderson got it last week when he was saying things like people need to cook better, shop better, budget better. And I would agree that some people do need to be able to do those things. And I would also agree with this minister today when she's saying, actually, longer term, people can start looking at, is there a different job I can reskill to? Can I juggle things differently, etc.? But people are furious about it.
Well, I think some of her, the coverage of some of her comments were overblown. I'd agree with that. I just think, well, there's two main things to say here. I think the first one is I just sometimes don't know what the Tories are doing politically. So they did 2019. It was all about this political realignment, you know, sort of along Leave and Remain, but that's just a rough guideline. Basically, they were going to target, you know, ex-Labour voters, and they did so very successfully in 2019. But they just have this way sometimes of just sort of saying, like, the wrong thing. So, and then I just don't know what they're trying to do. Do they want to be a sort of status party that is going to be, you know, just is comfortable with a bigger state helping people out? Or do they want to be like the old Tories and be like, you know...
Small state, personal responsibility.
And I mean, whatever they want to do, fine. And it would be interesting to see what they would do either way. But it feels like they sort of want to be both. And I just kind of feel like that's not really working out for them. I think the second thing I would say is around, you know, the COVID restrictions. I think it's slightly unfair when you know, we've come out of a period of time where the government has basically shut down the economy for large sections of time. Now, whether you thought that was a good thing or a bad thing is sort of irrelevant to what I'm about to say, which is it happened and it economically affected a lot of people. And to sort of, I know this isn't exactly what she said, but to even hint at the idea of, like, well, look, if you're struggling, it's sort of your fault, and can't you just do a little bit better? I think it's just politically bad for the Tories.
But she didn't even remotely hint at that. What she was saying, and this is where I think it was misrepresented, she wasn't saying, if you're struggling, you're basically lazy, so go do some more hours, go pull some shifts. What she was saying is, longer term, going forward, because there's two things in all of this, isn't there, in this cost of living. You've got your immediate short term, what do we do as an intervention in the here and now? And then you've got longer term, going forward, how do we help people get on a better track, better footing, change their life's direction? And I think both of those are not mutually exclusive. They're both needed. And what I'm noticing is a lot of this longer term chat is getting conflated with this, they don't care about the short term here and now. Although I would say, as I just said a minute ago, Ruth, I don't think they're doing enough in the here and now for people that really are struggling. Where do you stand on it all?
Well, I was going to say, I can see what she's driving at, and I agree with her to an extent. And she made it very, very clear that it wasn't appropriate to all households.
Yeah.
And this was about people who could actually advance themselves, or they were of working age, etc., etc. But, as you say, it has been conflated with the short-term problems. And through no fault of their own, people, of course, are faced with rapidly rising energy costs. Seriously rapidly increasing. I mean, we're going to talk about...
We're going to come on to that, yeah.
But, you know, the energy cap, well, we're going to talk about the energy cap.
Yeah, don't ruin my next segment, Ruth.
Well, I was going to say it was up 54%, you know, in April. Prices actually went up 54%, absolutely extraordinary. And of course we know that, you mentioned the problem of the economy, that as the economy came out of lockdown, as the global economy sort of recovered after lockdown, it did mean that there was this huge increase in energy prices, partly, I suspect, because Gazprom, which is, I think, the Russian gas company, was restricting supply. And that rapid increase in energy prices, of course, has been exacerbated by the war in Ukraine. Now, there's nothing that I can do about that. There's nothing any of us can do about that. And I'm with you that I think that Rishi Sunak, well, I think he is expected to do more to help with the cost of living crisis. I remember I was here for the spring statement. I don't know if you remember.
I do remember, yes.
And at the time, I sort of defended Rishi Sunak because I thought his statement was fair enough. But we all agreed, or at least some of us agreed, that there was more to come.
Of course.
There was, and I think we said that at the time.
We did, and I still stand by that, actually. I think he's holding more in his locker, because and he said anyway, didn't he, in the Queen's statement, it was said then, well, he didn't say it, but it was said in the Queen's statement, alluded to around the autumn time, that's when measures will be looked at again, because then you're going to have your heating on more and all the rest of it. But, James, let me bring you in.
It could be before that, because I think at the time of the spring statement, of course, he was talking about the 5p off the litre of diesel or fuel. And, of course, he had the February package. But I would like to see another package, preferably before the autumn budget, to cut prices by either cutting VAT, and VAT is 5% on fuel, I think, and indeed cutting the green levies, which are about 25% of energy costs. So I think there's a lot that could be done to actually alleviate the cost of living crisis, and I would not be surprised to see something before too long.
Well, Ian said, in his view, this minister doesn't give a monkeys, I'm just going to quote you directly, shouldn't give a monkeys about the majority of the public because it does not affect hair. What do you, I mean...
That's very vulgar.
Yeah.
That's very vulgar. If I may, Michelle,
yeah.
You know, if you read what she said, which it's always important to do, and Nick's quite right about that, she said, but over the long term, we need to have a plan to grow the economy and make sure that people are able to protect themselves better, whether that is taking on more hours or moving to a better paid job. These are long-term actions, but this is what we are focused on as a government. Now, she did, as you said and your clip showed, posit this, all in terms of the rather Byzantine welfare arrangements we have in this country, and Ian Duncan Smith stepped forward.
What does Byzantine mean?
Complicated, impossible to navigate,
right.
Impossible to translate, like the word Byzantine, as some people say. The point is that you know, the government does not have such a long-term plan as she's just called for, right? We need to have a plan, she said. Yeah, but the Tories have been in power 12 years. Boris has had some tumult, but he could have developed a plan. And the real question is, where are the new industries going to happen in the next 10 years, which will create the jobs and raise the living standards? And the failure to build those new industries, including energy, but many other ones, which I can enumerate.
Do you think it's the government's responsibility to create a new industry? Isn't that the responsibility of dynamic entrepreneurs to create the next industry?
But Michelle, that's right. But they have to create the political climate where if they went for hell for leather for small modular reactors, we'll come to that, then they'd face down the inevitable opposition from NIMBYs, from Extinction Rebellion and everybody else. They would create the political climate and the long-term R&D climate, and also they would dismantle a lot of regulation to make sure that that industry, fracking, and many non-energy industries are prioritised very, very fast. Anything else is dealing with symptoms at the level of families, which is how even the Labour opposition interpreted this statement. We need a macroeconomic view that is long-term and that concentrates on particular sectors and generates real jobs, not green jobs, which none of us have ever seen. Do you know how many solar power jobs there are in this country? 6,000. So it's not going to hack it. We need a different discussion.
Well, every day is a school day. Now I know the number of solar-powered jobs in this country. I am going to sleep much better tonight, so thanks for that little kernel of wisdom. Lots of you guys. Jeff says, Michelle, when I was buying my first house in the 1970s, I had 3 jobs and I worked 7 days a week. What is wrong with people today? How do you respond to that, Nick? What's wrong with people today, Jeff says? They're not working hard enough, he says.
I don't have a problem with it at all. I mean, I just think that politically, for the Tories, I just think they just really need to think about who they are and who they're trying to stand for and who they want to vote for them at the next general election. And I sometimes feel like it's all over the place. And I mean, I'm a politics nerd. I read everything every day. And if you said, what do
they stand for?
I don't know.
And what's their long-term plan for the economy?
Plan? Exactly, as you pointed out.
Which sectors will they prioritise? Yeah. Why?
And they've been in government, as you say, for 12 years. So why are we talking about long-term? I don't understand what they're doing.
But I think, I mean, to be fair, right now, there's been so many unforeseen circumstances. I mean, if you look at the landscape, it's not even just this country, by the way, it's the global landscape, but just focus on this country for now. We had Brexit. Mm-hmm. So Brexit happened. As the dust was even starting to settle, what you then had was everything up in the air again with a global pandemic. And then you've had a war. Well, you've got a war. So actually, when you put those kind of things together, I think that any political party would be kind of, if you're a boat, you'd be rocking left, right, and centre.
But whatever happened to cometh the moment, cometh the man.
Yes, exactly.
And Ruth, at one level, it's fair enough to talk about the Ukraine war and therefore the energy price rises. But you and I know that energy prices were rising well before this.
Hey, don't start going on about energy, you two.
I said that.
Hold your
because
excitement.
I said that as we were coming out of it.
But the point is, I'm coming to a larger point. It's not about energy, right? Which is this, that, to represent the government as helpless, more like hapless, in the face of monumental world events, a government's supposed to have prepared for those events years before, and it can't do everything, but it's not up to entrepreneurs to prepare for a war in Ukraine.
I think you're being very, very hard on them. I think you're being very, very hard on them. But if I may agree with something that you said...
Don't go too far, Ruth.
Well, I might fall off my chair, and you may fall off your chair. But no, I think when it comes to their energy policy, I think I've discussed this before, that I am deeply disquieted by their energy policy, and I have big, big reservations about the net zero. But I suspect bit by bit the government may come round to that.
Like us.
And elide the issue, if you know what I mean. But, I mean, to be fair, they have had one knock after another knock after another knock, and that is not easy to handle.
Well, I just want to read out some of your stories, actually, because so many of you are writing in, giving your kind of life's experience. So Linda says, I work 2 jobs now to buy the things that I want and need. I don't want to work more hours and I would rather just spend more time with my family. But that's just life. We can't expect others or government to subsidise our lifestyles. Many of you are giving me your examples of how many jobs you used to have to try and buy your own homes, your first homes, etc. People are giving me examples of when you lost your job, you went to your building society and you were basically told hard luck.